Well, we're here today with Ryl Jensen from the Digital Health Association, Chief Executive. Welcome to the CIO Studio.
Kia ora, good morning, Ray. Thank you very much for having me here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Can we start with you for a moment?
Sure.
Just maybe tell us a little bit about how you got to the Digital Health Association. What was your journey?
Sure. It's an interesting journey, actually. I reveal my sort of personal details a little bit to a few people every now and then, but I'm more than happy to share them. Previously I worked in IT back in my 20s, and I worked for the likes of IBM, EDS. In fact, I was on the project that put IRD, the PAYE, onto the internet in the 90s. So there's a form of that today. I'm sure it's not at all what we did back in the 90s. But that was a very exciting, very troubled project as well, as most government projects are. But had a great team of people that I worked with and a very enjoyable time. And then from there I moved over to London, did the old Kiwi thing, worked for Merrill Lynch HSBC in service level agreements and disaster recovery management, and we were trying to put banking and investment together so that you could invest and have the banking go at the same, put your banking through at the same time, or pay for it, I suppose, for your shares. And then 9/11 happened, and that killed that project. I came home to New Zealand just before 9/11, having met my husband while I was at home for a friend's wedding in Invercargill, of all places. Got teased very much about going home to go to Invercargill for 3 weeks. And then the rest is history with himself and me, and landed on his doorstep and never left. And 23 years later, we're still together, 2 fairly grown-up children now. And when we had our children, they actually were quite unwell, and especially my daughter, and that threw me into the health system. And so from there, I got to know how to navigate it. If anyone knows me, I'm a bit of a pusher and a driver. Don't accept no for an answer. But over a 12-year prolonged period between myself and the children, we've had 35 surgeries. And so we know the system really well. We used to joke about moving the couch or the bed into the GP's office because we were there 3 or 4 times a week. And my first piece of advocacy was around Ashman's syndrome, which is where a woman is made infertile, usually through surgery. And I lobbied our government around that and how women could be better protected, and also helped found the International Ashman's Association from a US and global level. And then I fell in love with politics and decided, well, look, if I actually want to be taken seriously, I better go back to uni. And so I went and studied my Masters of Health, and through that I volunteered with NZ HIT, who is prior to DHA, and I volunteered to help write the report with the wonderful Mark Cox and Malcolm Pollock, and spent my summer basically volunteering to do that. And Scott Errol, previous CEO, had left by that point, and the boys said to me, "Ryl, you should apply for the job." And I'm like, "What? You've got to be kidding me. I don't have enough experience for that." I didn't get the CEO job at the time. I got general manager's position, but the CEO role became vacant within actually just a few weeks or a couple of months, and I was made acting CEO, and then officially in August CEO, and the rest is history.
Ah, well done. Yeah. So with all of that background, your profile sounds perfect for the role that you hold. So how does DHA do that? How do you advocate for digital health in the current environment?
Yeah, well, the current environment actually probably provides more of a role for advocacy more than ever with recent budget announcements. But to advocate for digital health, one, you have to be quite broad knowledged, and that's been baptism by fire. I don't know if I knew what an application programming interface was when I first came in, and my husband is in IT, so I said, honey, what's an API? And he explained it really easily, and this is the explanation I give to a lay person as well, is, you know, when you're booking a flight and you ask Air New Zealand, you give it a date and a time, and you ask it to go and find me a flight or find me several options. Well, it's an API in the background that's retrieving that information and coming back to you. So it was baptism by fire. So first of all, I had to learn the ecosystem and the people in the ecosystem as well, and I had to gain their trust. I think advocating for digital health is, one, understanding what's going on, but two, it's about being tenacious. It's about making sure that you get the right message at the right time to the right people, and that you work collaboratively as a community to push the messages forward. And I believe that as a community we're stronger together. So it's been 3 years of bringing that community together and making sure that our voice just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And at the moment, when digital health has had a little bit of a pushback, I think we need to move forward as far as possible and get the word out how important technology is as an enabler for the health system.
And so what are some of the successes that you think you've had in the last few years?
Well, when I first started, we had only myself and one very part-time FTE and an accountant. And now I have several contractors that are underneath me, and we work together as a team when we push forward. We've grown the membership. We've grown the scope of the organisation, the reach of the organisation. I think the successes specifically, we've had enormous success with around software as a medical device and the Therapeutic Products Act. That submission was absolutely massive. And when I met with the Ministry of Health, they said to me that our submission was in the top 5 out of 17,000 submissions and helped change the legislation. We're still on that path because this current government is repealing the Act, and we felt it didn't quite go far enough, so we will be resubmitting and looking at our supplementary order paper as well. Other successes is building the relationship with government and being that conduit between government. So we've grown in the way that how many people come in to listen and gaining that information and sending that relevant information out so everybody is informed. I had a wonderful compliment yesterday around the fact that what was some of my favourite members, and they said to me, I feel like I'm part of a family with you, and also whenever we meet with you, we feel like we are the most important person in the room. And for me, that's a personal achievement. Other achievements, we have recently been given the opportunity by Minister Ducey, the new Minister of Mental Health, to host a digital mental health summit at Parliament. We have held successful parliamentary events where we get the whole of the health sector together, not just our members. And we just are building and building and building our reach and advocacy. I could probably name a few more, but I'll stop there, Ray.
It's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
So that whole software as a medical device issue is really complex. We could probably spend the whole time talking about that. But could you for our listeners, could you summarise what you think are the key issues there for software developers to be considering?
Yeah, sure. So we have currently, we actually currently have an act that was rushed through Parliament in August last year that is not enacted at the moment. So we're still governed by several other acts, so the Medicines Act and so on and so forth. And they decided, actually it started quite a number of years ago, even in the previous national government, that these acts were probably outdated. And what happened though was under the Labor government, they decided that they would put together all of the medicines and natural health products and consumer goods and medical devices and software as a medical device all in one act and try to cover everybody. And what that meant was that what defined a therapeutic purpose was very, very broad. And so for software as a medical device, which had never featured in any act in particular before, one, they didn't consult with industry through a draft exposure in 2018. They didn't move forward and continue to look at that. They very briefly looked at software as a medical device. But the broadness of those definitions, which is far more than international examples, meant that about 80% of our members, whether or not you actually had a true medical device that had software that could constitute software as a medical device, would be captured. And so that would slow down innovation, that would slow down being able to use the devices. It possibly would even cancel some software and when it wasn't necessary. So when we think of software as a medical device, what's important is a piece of software that, say, measures a radiation dose. And so you want that one regulated, because if that didn't have regulation around it and it failed, someone could receive a large dose of radiation that could be very harmful. And the Therapeutic Products Act is meant to reduce harm for consumers. But a patient management system where a doctor is typing in notes is not harmful to a patient, so it shouldn't be captured by the Act. However, we were finding that by the definition that we were going to be captured, and that wasn't acceptable.
So would have introduced a lot of new unnecessary regulation for software vendors and costs and so on.
And I think there are other problems as well. We just don't have a body that could manage being able to cope with that amount of software that would needed to be regulated and therefore receive their certificates. It wasn't in line with overseas jurisdictions and what overseas were doing. And so there was many different points. We actually had 12 arguments in the submission, and then we also outlined our legal position as well, and with recommendations on what needed to happen. We consulted widely. We consulted with Germany, Australia, the US. We looked at the Canadian model. And so we went as broad as we possibly could, and therefore that was what gave our submission strength. Yeah, well done.
So you hinted earlier about the recent budgetary announcements.
I did.
For digital health. Can you kind of summarise how you see these impacting on the sector, and what steps are DHA going to be taking in response to that? Sure.
Look, I think that the recent budget cuts are really disappointing. I'm sad to see the gas being taken off the pedal around digital health. I feel personally and very passionately about technology being an enabler, not only for our consumers of the health system, but also for our health workforce. And New Zealand's in a position where we have a lot of technical debt, and that's been brought about by having 20 district health board systems that have funded technology at different rates, and we've got a lot of disparate systems. So we have a lot of ground to cover in order to get ourselves uplifted. And I don't believe that now is the time to pull back from that. And I think we were just getting to a point where we were seeing some foundational steps being created. Look, I think every large national program of work always has its challenges, and certainly some of the programs of work that have had funding paused have had their challenges, and there's been different views on what the program of work is and should be, who should be collaborating on it, who should be leading it, who should be executing it. Should we do more with industry? Should it be led more nationally? You know, there's lots of different arguments out there. However, what I have seen is that the absolute sort of, I guess everything's just stopped, also takes away some of that intellectual collateral that sits inside some of our organisations. So the people that are driving these projects and that they have a lot of knowledge and they have a lot of history, and yet their jobs are now gone. So I think, and to rebuild that takes a long time. Mm-hmm. So that is one side. There's also on the other side, there's an opportunity. And the opportunity is that within the budget documents, there was a caveat that by the end of the year, that we need to resubmit. When I say we, I talk about the wider we, not me, the DHA. Resubmit business cases, and that is an opportunity for the sector and government to come together to reimagine what could we slightly tweak here to have a better path, have a more robust path. What is it that we need to do together to be able to achieve interoperability across our health system, which will therefore enable our people and also enable our clinicians and our health workforce. And then there is another bit where, there was a lot of really good projects that were so close to going live, so close, but with the pause and with the reprioritisation of the funding, they're now stopped. And actually, those projects are the ones that I want to weed out. I want to know exactly what has been paused and exactly what that might mean to the New Zealand people by pausing those projects. And actually, if we move forward with those projects, would that have enabled our people a lot more? And the DHA wants to capture every one of those projects and find out where's the people angle. Because mainstream media will not pick up quite a technical health IT media release. Our health IT media will, and everybody in our health IT system will understand that media release. However, Joe Bloggs just wants to know, well, why can't I read my personal health records? Why can't I see all of my labs all at once? Why is it that I only get a discharge summary from hospital and not my whole record? Why is it that my physio can't connect in with my GP? Why is it that... So those are the stories that the people want to know about it. Mm. And we seem to accept the status quo. We have moved so far forward with technology and banking, airlines, retail, and everywhere else in our lives. We carry these mini computers everywhere, every day. We run our email off our phone if we're travelling. And yet in our health system, we just stay quite stuck and we can't get that momentum. So there's a significant, deep disappointment that there is not the focus of this government on technology. I also believe that if we enable our sector, then that grows our innovation, it grows our GDP, and if we grow our GDP, we can spend more money on services for our people, and all of that is healthy and good.
So you and I first met on the HERA program. So
yes.
let's drill into that a little bit. What do you think the effect of that, the changes in that particular program are going to be? Because that was intended to be quite foundational, right?
Yes. And I believe that HERA as a concept, so the concept that Shane Hunter and Darren Douglas and everybody imagined, the ability to connect all of our disparate systems. So rather than replacing all our systems with one monolithic EHR, which there was talk about that in 2015, so when we have a connector plane that can actually, connect information, I think that concept and that foundation is vital for New Zealand. I think it allows for innovation. It allows that community app that is really important to, say, Tairāwhiti or another community can connect in through the HIRA plane as long as they meet those requirements, which is interoperability. So around standards, around your cybersecurity, software as a service. I think that concept of HIRA is vital for us to move forward with technology and enable not only our health providers, but also our people to have that view of the whole of their health record. To stop it now, when it was finally gaining some momentum, for me seems backwards, and I hope that it is only a pause and a reset, because there is arguments that HIRA didn't quite the concept of HIRA or the plan of HIRA didn't quite get it right. And so I've heard it from both sides. I've heard it from my industry colleagues and I've heard it from my government colleagues. And so what I don't want to see is this concept stop altogether.
Yes, just concepts fail in the implementation, not in the concept level,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
And so I want to ensure that our advocacy works through that, and then also that we as a sector come together to help our government colleagues to perhaps reimagine, well, what is the way forward? How can we mobilise everybody together in order to achieve this? Because the concept is right. It actually is right for New Zealand. And Estonia have done it successfully, and they've done it across all of government with their connector plane, which is X-Road. And that connector plane, using APIs, using standards, using all those interoperability enablers, is what will enable Joe Bloggs and his whānau to be able to see and control his health information and all of his health information, not just parts of it. And I think then that allows the patient to keep control of their health journey and helps them be more active and proactive in their journey. And I think that's what we need to remember. And then the health provider also has that connection and that full information of that person. So they might have access to critical allergies that a person might have. And if that person actually can't speak to that doctor, then that doctor's just taking a guess. And so it makes it a safer, more viable, more functional health system. And then I think we can't forget who we're doing this for. And I think sometimes, as you say, programs of work can lose their way. But I feel the hurt and the pain of the HIRA team right now. And I'm sure you, Ray, as previous director of HIRA, feel that as well. Because there's a lot of very hard work. And it had a shaky start, right? It had a pretty shaky start.
I think everyone agrees on that.
Yeah, yeah. And in that way, it's a little bit tainted. And so can it be reset? Can it be refunded? Well, I truly hope so.
I think I heard the Prime Minister mention Estonia in one of his discussions about what we should be looking at. I wonder if that's significant.
Yes, well, I think Judith Collins is looking at it as well. And I've done a couple of papers on Estonia and worked quite closely with the Estonian group. They've got the Nordic Interoperability Institute for, I can't remember, it's long and winded, and it sits in Helsinki in Finland. So they work very closely, Finland and Estonia. And what I love about Estonia is, you know, they came out of nothing. They came out of Russian rule, and all the Russians left and went back to Russia, so their population reduced significantly. They literally had no money, and they were a very poor country. They have very little natural resources that they can sell, so they don't have forestry, they don't have farming, and they don't have all of those other things that New Zealand does have. And so they sat there and they thought, well, what are we going to do? Actually, how are we going to build our country and give wealth to our country so that we can afford health services and all the other services that our people need? And they said, and they made a decision, we're going to become the greatest little tech nation in the world. And quite frankly, they have.
Yeah, they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And they are an inspiration. And so our Prime Minister should be looking towards them, and we should be aiming for that kind of level. And I think in a small country like ourselves, we have the ability to do it.
So you mentioned, or you touched on the discussion that happened nearly 10 years ago right now about the what's referred to as the EPIC endeavour, trying to think of a national electronic health record, which many countries and many organisations overseas have gone down that path. Do you think that that's going to come back onto the agenda?
I actually hope it doesn't, because I think it will kill innovation in New Zealand. I think what we've created in New Zealand is, with our 20 district health boards and with many smaller organisations having sold technology into each district health board, and each district health board having been a Crown entity and responsible for their own funding and their own path and choosing their own IT, if we go monolithic, then all of that is gone. And actually we need our innovators. We need to lift the technical debt, and we need to aid some of these organisations that need to do that. But I don't think it's the right answer for New Zealand. I think that technology has come of age, and we've seen other countries successfully bring in a connector plane and a virtual electronic layer that is able to connect all the disparate systems. Yes, there are levels that people have to reach in order to connect in. And that's one of the tricky, complex bits, right? But we shouldn't take that innovation away from the sector. And by allowing technology to speak for itself, we enable the innovation. So I don't want to see a monolithic EHR.
Some of your members have commented quite publicly on their opinion that it's not possible to innovate in the current environment. Do you agree with that?
I think the current environment is quite constrained, but I think we need to enable HIRA. Maybe it needs to be reimagined and reset a wee bit, but I think if everybody is, and we also need to lift the technical debt as well, but if we are able to get to that point where HIRA is actually functioning in the way that it was set out to do, that vision of it, then every single player will be able to come in. Because if you do have the right cyber level, if you are operating in the cloud, if you are using or developing APIs, if you are working with standards, if you are doing all of those things, there is no barrier to jumping in. But we haven't got there yet. I think what they refer to is the fact that what we've done is we've gone from 20 district health boards that chose their own path, and where people could seek and find and get contracts, and they were dealing with just that district health board, to a very large monolithic health system where, one ring to rule them all. So I'm not sure it's about the technology. I think it's about the processes behind the technology that we've done with the health system reforms.
So many of our customers are small entities. They're NGOs, primary care organisations with deeply complex digital problems, but very small resources to deal with. So I think many of them need this ecosystem to exist. But what advice would you give them in terms of the way in which they should be looking?
Yeah, it's really hard because it's such a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? It's like if you've got if you're at a small system and your application is dealing with just a minority group and it's very specific, you may not get the funds to develop it as much as what you would like. And so you need to get the funds in order to move into potentially a SaaS environment, which is where you can connect into, a virtual electronic health layer so that your information can be seen. What advice would I give them? Keep exploring your opportunities on how to do that. Keep exploring on how you can lift your technical capabilities within that SaaS space. I think we have another challenge, and that is that this budget has removed a significant amount of operating funding, and SAS works in an OPEX environment. And so I think we've got that monetary and fiscal challenge, and that actually comes back to our people and the people that are developing these, or they own these small systems. How do they get the operating funding to be able to continue their development and continue their programs? And so I think that we've got some government and political challenges, and then we've also got their challenges of being able to move forward. So again, it's that chicken and egg. So if they can slowly inch by inch by inch and consult with very clever people like yourself, and get that advice on, well, how do I achieve that? How do I get from here to there in order to be ready to be here?
So it's that importance of more strategic thinking,
Yes.
rather than just focusing on selecting a product or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as a sector we need to do that as well. Like, we need to have really great audacious national goals. But then we need to work backwards from there to say, well, how are we actually going to achieve that? And who can help us achieve that? And if government can also bring industry in significantly, we may be able to achieve it faster. I know that's the argument I hear all the time. But also it has to be laid out in a fashion that has good what's the word, Ray? You sort of got some parameters around it. So we all actually understand, where do I innovate inside? Where do I go?
Where are the boundaries of context?
Yes. And then I think we also need to look at our procurement as well. So I'm not sure that government procurement enables innovation.
Yeah, I think your members would agree with you there.
Yeah, and I think that's where we get that noise, right? We get that noise because I think sometimes within the big machine, the left hand doesn't necessarily talk to the right hand. And I also think that even within our government departments, they get frustrated with the left hand not talking to the right hand. But is it right to throw it out there and criticise, or is it better to work constructively and to actually move forward with some really good, solid ideas, and how can we actually work together to solve this?
Yeah, there's no point in complaining about the landscape. You have to find a way to traverse it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about your members for a bit, because you've
Yes.
been successful in growing the membership over the years you've been in place. What are some of the benefits of being in DHA, and what would you say to people that are contemplating membership?
Yeah, sure. Look, I consider the DHA to be the voice of the digital health sector. And I think that voice has got stronger and louder, and as I've found where I need to be as well, and the tone that it needs to be at, then the community has grown. So there's not only advantages in being involved in a community and being involved in your digital health whānau and coming together as a community, especially at times like this. I think we need to be a community more than ever at the moment. And I don't know what I don't know, so you need to tell me. And I do love that. I love that people reach out and they feel safe in coming with issues, and we create a safe environment. I advocate at the highest levels of government. So we don't just talk to Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora and Ministry of Health, but we also talk to ministers, and we also write to ministers, and we make sure that the messages are heard around that cabinet table. And I think now more than ever that's even more vital. I also consult and bring in the members with me. So I think there's many different reasons for joining. There's lots of amazing events, and there's lots of information flow. So I consider us the conduit between government and industry. So we will always send out the information that we get given from government. We will bring information to you. We also give you the opportunity to ask questions of government, which doesn't always happen in other forums. So if you have a burning question, we will get it answered. The other thing that I do is challenge Health New Zealand as well. So I've been invited. It's like, you need to challenge us, Ryl. You need to challenge our thinking. And so if there is something tricky, I will go to them and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Tell me what we can do with this. So I think it's that community, that exploring things together. The other thing that we've been doing a lot more of lately as well is looking at overseas markets. So while our market is a little bit closed at the moment, and they're trying to work through the reform, and unfortunately the reform with procurement and practices hasn't necessarily been, that great for some of our members. There are other markets that are really moving forward with digital health. Australia, our cousins, are really driving forward with funding, and so part of that is being able to say, well, how can our members get there? It's our first market that we look to. And so what information can I provide and what information can I do to enable that and get those conversations moving? And I think that was top of mind for me as I went to the Digital Health Festival in Melbourne and spotted our Australian federal government colleagues and decided, I've got an idea. We've got a parliamentary event coming up. Let's see if we can get the Australian delegation out to New Zealand. Let's see if we can actually have those conversations about sharing information by default between Australia and New Zealand in the same way that Estonia and Finland do. And then if we have that audacious goal, then what do both countries need to do to get there? So what's the enabling environment in order for that to happen? And then how can we actually enable our members to have that 1 or 2 minute conversation with somebody in a different market that might open doors for them? So,
we can all be digital Anzacs together.
Yeah, digital Anzacs. But I love my job. I love the connectivity. I connect people. I love to bring people together. I love to tackle the hard stuff as well. I love the policy work. I absolutely love it. I love thinking and trying to solve some of the issues. I'm not somebody that can do it on my own. One of my catchphrases is, you catch more flies with honey. I'm not somebody that will, and some people want me to be a bit more forceful, but I don't believe that that's how you build relationships and move things forward. And you need to work together. You can challenge, but you need to be respectful in the way that you do that. And
progress is made in excruciatingly small increments.
And at the moment, it does feel like that for a lot of people. And there's a lot of nervousness and there's a lot of uncertainty. And that's definitely, since the budget announcements, that's felt even more at the moment. And I can feel it. And it makes me quite emotional, actually, because I'm very passionate about digital being an enabler.
I think we also have to think, though, that this too will pass. So,
yes.
So what comes next after this cycle and resumption? What does the future hold for us as digital community?
Well, I think there's great things. Yeah, if we can get the settings right, and that is key, right? So those ones that are making the decisions, and I'm talking top table here, I'm talking cabinet. Those ones that are making those decisions around whether or not technology can be a real key enabler for New Zealand in many different areas. So government probably needs to really address that OPEX, CAPEX issue. And that's an all of government problem. That doesn't just apply to health, that applies everywhere. And from my perspective, and this is where I will challenge, Treasury are burying their heads in the sand around that. DIA are trying to get the word out. They're not listening. And there's some very clever people out there that understand this problem, because this is a global issue. How do we shift from a capital funding model that depreciates over time to an operating subscription model, and where software as a service is an operating and subscription model? We want the safety and the security of data centres, but we're not willing to pay for it. I find that conundrum needs to be solved. That's one that the DHA will pick up with the Minister of Finance. I think moving forward, Ray, I wrote a thesis, right? Let's go there. So I finished off my Masters of Health, and my final 2 years of my Masters I spent looking at Estonia and New Zealand, and then leadership and governance of digital health. And once I got into that leadership and governance, that was where my heart really sang. It was like, okay, I see a gap here. I see that we're not governing it properly. We're not enabling our leaders to be able to have the environment where they can actually procure in a way that is agile. We're not enabling subject matter experts to come in and feed in to that governance model. And we are very good at top-down leadership in New Zealand. And we've seen this happen. We've seen it happen where if we actually get the wrong leader and we get somebody that doesn't have the same vision or isn't able to take a team with him or her, that a whole program of work can implode. And then all of this money is wasted, and all of this time is wasted, and there's frustration that builds. So I believe in middle-out governance, and you've got to bring these people together. So I've suggested in my thesis to build a Crown entity for digital health. And the reason why we want to do that is because technology touches the whole of the health system. It's not just hospitals, it's primary, it's tertiary, it's community, it's NGO, it's everywhere you go, there is digital. And it needs the proper settings and the proper leadership and a whole bunch of people that are subject matter experts feeding into that governance. So you want the right audit and risk people feeding into audit and risk. You want the right standards and technical capabilities feeding into that conversation. You want industry and innovation feeding into that. You want consumer, Hei Ora Māori, and equity feeding in together. You want clinical feeding in and giving the right information. And then you want a board that can actually bring all of that together. Maybe committees work together on certain things. You want security to be feeding in properly as well. And then actually that drives it. That drives it so much better. And you give it its own funding. You make sure it's funded well. You make sure it's CPI adjusted so it's not scrambling. And then you allow it to reach its tentacles to every part of the health system and connect in with every corner, and then we might get some better movement with it. That's my thought anyway.
Your thesis is very interesting reading on that subject. I did think that there are lots, in some ways, it's a return to the past. We did have elements of that in the past, and I think in many ways that was quite successful. So here's hoping that we can pull a new future out of all of this.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to see it. I think there's always challenges that will come up. There's always, no one is ever going to get it 100% right all of the time. We would love it if that happened. But when egos get in the way, we get in trouble.
Always.
And we need to be able to work together. But we also need to be able to innovate. I think in and of itself, digital is agile. And we've moved from a waterfall approach, which back in my IBM days, my EDS days, we were definitely waterfall. So, okay, let's take this. This is where we want to go. We're going to work there. Oh, there's some problems. All right, well, But now we do proof of concepts. Now we do minimum viable products. Now we want to fail fast. But government procurement practices are not set that way. And so actually all of those processes need to catch up with technology. But the very thing that can do and help that is technology. And so we need to actually embrace it. And we need the people at the top table looking at it and saying, this is our way forward. We will become a nation of technology enablers that will therefore grow this technology ecosystem that will then contribute to our GDP, that will then have a broader benefit to the New Zealand people. Technology enables us at the bottom end of the world to communicate with the other side of the world really easily.
Weightless export.
Yeah. And we're not, for a government that said we embrace technology, but now it feels like we're not. It feels like we've gone backwards. It's like, well, where is the focus?
Well, let's hope that is a temporary situation.
Very temporary.
And your vision will be realised in due course. Sounds like you're absolutely the woman for the job at the moment. So thank you on behalf of us as a member of DHA, and I guess a lot of the other members would feel the same way. Thank you for the excellent work that you do, and thank you for coming in and speaking to us today. It's been very interesting to discuss these weighty issues with you. So.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks,
yeah,
Ryl.
I truly believe in my members, and I truly believe that together we can all get there. And in some ways, the budget for me is an exciting opportunity to really let that advocacy sing, right? So, and to really tackle it. There will be a lot of thought that will go into how I tackle that. But I want to invite my members in to give me the stories that will speak to the public, because the mainstream media will pick up, well, if this has hurt the public, they'll pick that up. Mm. They won't pick it up if we can't prove that end-to-end point.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
But, thank you very, very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Good to have you here. We'll
Yeah.
have you back again when the vision is starting to be realised.